had been following the case since the beginning seemed reluctant to hazard a guess about the outcome. I figured that they were just trying to remain objective for the cameras. Like me, they must have seen enough convincing evidence throughout the trial to make Jackson's guilt a foregone conclusion. Hadn't the boy's entire family, after all, been witness to the crimes? Hadn't a stewardess seen Jackson plying the boy with alcohol on board an airplane? Hadn't members of the staff at Neverland testified to some highly suspicious shenanigans that pointed to only one conclusion? And what about reports that Jackson had been accused before of molesting a boy, and had apparently offered a multi-million-dollar settlement to avoid going to trial years earlier? Where there's smoke, there's fire, his detractors argued convincingly. And most telling of all, the only evidence that I really needed to convince me, hadn't Jackson actually admitted to letting the boy sleep in his bed? All very damning evidence, and surely enough to send Jackson away for a very long time, to a place where molesting children would not be likely to elicit him a warm welcome from his new roommates. As I waited for the fateful moment of justice, the scene outside the courthouse resembled a circus, as crowds of Jackson fans and detractors competed for the attention of the hundreds of television crews who had assembled from all corners of the globe to report on the latest trial of the century. "MJ innocent! MJ innocent!" came the cries from his large contingent of loyal fans. They were met with cries of, "Fry him! Fry him!" from the equally boisterous crowd of child advocates across the street. The crescendo built to a deafening roar as a motorcade pulled up in front of the courthouse. As the doors of a black SUV opened, a phalanx of bodyguards surrounded its occupant, an uncharacteristically normal-looking Michael Jackson, wearing a dark suit and tie. This was a far cry from the day he arrived 20 minutes late in the middle of the trial wearing a pair of pajamas. The legal commentators were reporting that the district attorney, Tom Snedden, was very confident, cocky even, as he entered the courthouse, convinced that a conviction was imminent. This was the man who had spent more than a decade determined to bring Jackson to justice for the unspeakable crimes he was sure the singer had gotten away with when he settled with the first boy in 1994. A modern-day Inspector Javert, he had more than 10 years to gather evidence, assemble witnesses, and wait for the victim he knew would eventually come forward to secure him the long-awaited indictment he had been itching for all these years. Surely he would not have gone forward unless he had an airtight case. And so I waited, along with the rest of the world, for the only possible verdict: guilty. The word that would finally erase the stench that had been lingering over the American justice system ever since the O.J. trial, when the jury pronounced a cold-blooded killer not guilty on all counts. 4:45 p.m. The time we had been promised an announcement came and went. "I think we're going to see convictions here," declared one legal analyst as the wait dragged on, noting that the jury had deliberated too long for an acquittal. The judge had not allowed cameras in the courtroom, but he had authorized an audio feed so that we could hear the verdict in real time along with the defendant, who faced as much as 20 years in prison if found guilty. Reporters in the courtroom informed us that the verdict had been handed to the judge, and that 2 of the jurors were staring at him on the bench, instead of at Jackson. "When the jury stares at the judge, it's not an innocent," announces a seasoned legal observer. "They do not want to look at the defendant that they have just convicted." Finally, the talking heads shut up and the audio feed begins. "The people of California, plaintiff, versus Michael Joe Jackson, defendant. Case number 1133603. Count 1. Verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of conspiracy as charged in Count 1 of the indictment. Count 2. Verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant